Now if we move on, we got more options: no unused locals, no unused parameters, no implicit returns. This helps you with code quality basically. TypeScript will complain if you have certain unused variables and so on. So if we turn these three options on, for example, this option helps you with switch statements where you might forget the break keyword. But if we turn these three options on, what TypeScript will complain about is, for example, if you had a username variable here locally in this function and you don't use it. You see, this has yellow squiggly lines because it's not an error really, it's more like a warning or a hint. So if I compile here, you see now, however, I do get an error because TypeScript only knows errors. And there we see that username is declared, but its value is never read because we made sure that we don't want unused local variables. Unused global variables, so if I had something like app ID here, are allowed though because TypeScript can't know if you maybe need that globally defined value in another script file. So therefore this is allowed, but in a function where there is no other place where you could need it, TypeScript will complain now if you have unused code. And that's generally a good idea, allows you to strip out such unused code. Same goes for unused parameters. If you would take a age here, for one, of course, bind is broken now, but even if we pass this in, this works. But now again, TypeScript and therefore also the IDE tells us that this is unused, and indeed it is, so maybe we should remove it or start using it. So that's no unused parameters. And no implicit returns means that we'll get an error if we have a function that sometimes returns something and sometimes it does not. Let's say we have another function, add, where we get two numbers, number and n2 is a number. And of course we can return n1 plus n2. But let's say we're for some reason checking if n1 plus n2 is greater than 0, because we only want to return if we have a result greater than 0. And then we want to return the value. Otherwise, we want to return nothing. We don't want to return. Well, then we get a warning because of that extra setting with no implicit returns. TypeScript detects that not all branches in this function lead to a return statement. And because of our setting, that's not allowed. We at least have to deliberately not return anything here by adding the return keyword. Just omitting it is not allowed here. It is allowed if you have a function that does not return anything in no branch, but if you have at least one case where your function does return something, then you have to make sure you return something in all cases. And with that, we're nearing the end of this config walkthrough. We can ignore the module resolution here. All these options actually are pretty advanced. They don't matter to us here, don't matter to you in a lot of projects. Source map options allow you to tweak these source maps we had a look at earlier. So these translation files from JavaScript to TypeScript. Typically, default settings should be fine here. So if you don't know what you're changing and why you're doing it, you typically don't need to change anything here. And regarding these experimental options, I'll have a look at them, specifically at experimental decorators, later in the decorators module. This basically enables certain features to be used in TypeScript which are really experimental, where it's not sure if they will end up in JavaScript at some time in the future, and where you still might want to work with them. Then you explicitly have to tell TypeScript that you want to work with these features, and you can do that with that configuration, but again, I will come back to that. And therefore now, we walked through this file, a lot of options you can set there, and as TypeScript grows, you typically also get more and more options added here. Therefore, the official docs are, of course, always a great place to dive deeper and to make sure that you don't miss an interesting option that might help you in your project.